Hey everyone, back with part two of our discussion here with Hall of Famer Steve Flink. So Steve, I wanted to ask you about Taylor Fritz's run because getting to a major final is a pretty big deal for him. Hadn't been past the quarterfinals, and we I remember doing our Wimbledon recap, and we were talking about how we both felt a little bit disappointed in his quarterfinal loss to Musetti. And overall,
Yes.
it's been a really good last five majors for him, big picture. But this was a big step in the right direction. Of course, also to back up this Zverev win and beat Tiafo in five sets the way the way he did with I felt like he was quite tight in that match. He definitely felt the pressure and weight of the occasion. Playing Francis, a guy he had a 6-1 head-to-head coming in, but also beat Berrettini and Ruud earlier on in the week. So what do you sort of make of this? And do you think this is something like repeatable for him? Can he do this again, or is this kind of major final is like his ceiling?
Yeah, it might be. It might be. I'm a little torn on that. I wouldn't put it past him to squeeze out a major sometime in the next 3 years because he's very determined. And also, I did like the comments that he made where he alluded to the fact that he never felt he played out of his mind in this tournament. He never thought he played that great. He didn't feel he played badly, but that the point being in his mind, if you can get to the final playing only well and not great, that's a good sign. And I agree with that. And I agree with what you said about all those wins. I mean, Berrettini thought he might kind of break the spell against him. And Ruud was capable of beating him and won the first set. And it all turned late in the second. And then the Zverev match, obviously, repeating what he did at Wimbledon against Sasha, especially coming through in the clutch to win the two breakers in the first and fourth sets, was, from his end of things, laudatory. So, and I agree. You made a point that nobody else has yet made. You're the first one I heard say that about Fritz versus Tiafoe. He was tight because he got off to a 3-love opening set start. It's only one break, I get it. But when you serve as well as he does and you're up 3-love and you lose the set 6-4, something's a little bit wrong. And I don't think that should have happened. I can understand maybe one of the breaks getting away, but not both. And I think worst case scenario, he should have been able to serve his way into a tiebreak. That didn't happen. Then I thought he played a very good second set. He really played a lot of good service games in the second. He started serving much better, I thought, in the second, and then got the break at the end, and only to play what I thought was a very sloppy game to start the third set. I didn't think he made Tiafoe work that hard to get that break, and that really decided the set. It was the only break of the set. And then it came to the end of the third, and that's where the tightness showed again, Bunch, because he had love 30 and he made 4 consecutive, what I consider to be all unforced errors. And so that put Francis in the driver's seat at 2-1. And then the fourth set reminded me quite a bit of the second in the way that Fritz buckled down. And obviously he won a big 31-stroke rally at 3-all in the fourth. He really raised his game and he made Francis work very hard. He moved exceptionally well himself. And then came that fatal game for Francis at 4-5 when he's 40-15, having served an ace, and then he serves 2 doubles in a row, mishits a forehand pretty flagrantly, and then dumps a forehand drop into the net. So those 4 points in a row made it 2-all, and Francis was pretty spent in the fifth, but all credit to Taylor because he was very fit. And at a time when he might have gotten a little bit weary and fatigued in the fourth, he didn't allow it to happen. His fitness and training showed as that match wore on, and then Francis imploded for whatever the reasons were. It was, he tried to explain it. I guess it was partially like it was anxiety coming in and just exhaustion, maybe a combination of things, but he was never the same player. But I did think that I was so glad to hear you say that about tension in Fritz, because I felt like he wanted this so badly. And that Francis, up until late in the fourth, he relaxed more than Taylor did, and that Fritz ended up getting in his own way to get down a set and to get down 2-1. But I thought it was terrific the way he bounced back, because it was such an important match for him to take him into the finals of his country's Grand Slam event. And he played a respectable final, Vanch, but not a great serving first set to get broken 3 times, because he had it down 2-love early, went up 3-2, and then lost his serve twice from there. Only lost it once at the end of the second set. Served quite well in the second, and then got that break lead in the third to go up 5-3. And could not put Sinner away, and that was, I think, more Sinner elevating his game than Taylor going off his game. So considering that it's his first major final, I think he gave a decent account of himself, just lost to a better player. But to get back to your original question, I'm not sure he wins a major. I'm not sure. I probably would say, if I had to bet one way or another, I'd say no. But I expect him back in the latter stages of majors. I expect to see him in some semis and maybe another final or two. And maybe he will surprise us. But I think the odds are slightly against him pulling it off. Do you share that view, or do you think he makes the breakthrough?
No, I think I agree with you. I think I'm leaning towards no as well. I think he's improved his movement a ton, but it's still not good enough to the likes of, Sinner and Alcaraz, and, even at their, without the tension of Medvedev and Zverev. I just feel like, there's maybe too much of an athletic gap there as much as he's improved it. But I also think the transition game, which he started to do a better job of at the third set. He was 9 for 12 on net points won. But of course, we remember the two key misses, which is when he was serving for the third set at 5-4,
right,
the forehand volley, kind of swung at it when he should have just blocked it and made it, because I didn't think the pass from Sinner was great. Like, it was hard at him, but I think he should have made that volley. And then there was also another swing volley he missed in the final game.
Yeah, he really mishit that swing volley. You're right. And the other forehand volley, yeah, he was a bit discombobulated coming in to get to the drop shot and then to stretch for the volley. But you're right. Sinner didn't hit an exceptional pass. It wasn't that low. And it's one that Taylor needs to make. But again, I think that could come with more of a concerted effort to get in more often. He did in that set. That was impressive because he sort of made up his mind that he was going to go out swinging. He was going to be aggressive in that third. And part of that meant coming forward more, but I think he needs to do that on a more regular basis against everyone, and then if that happens, his anticipation and technique at the net will probably improve.
Mm-hmm. I think another factor might be that throughout the tournament, he was playing players with slice backhands. So he knew that, if he hit a really good shot, if he came in, the volley didn't have to be terrific, and he could put most of those away. But then when he's playing a guy like Sinner, who hits so strong off the corners, and he has the open stance backhand as well, I think maybe some of that maybe intimidated him. So I think he got into a lot of those exchanges that Sinner really loves, which is the power linear baselining. And, he would hit some really good shots. He would open up the court, but he still wouldn't move forward. And so the rally would just reset. And I felt like it was just very reliant on his first serve, because he was at 38% first serves in the first set. And of course, that wasn't going to be good enough. But when Yannick moved back on the return of serve at the end of the second, he knew that Fritz wasn't going to serve and volley, or he wasn't going to come in behind strong approach shots. So I felt like Sinner was able to get away with that, in a way that I guess, just highlights that Taylor, probably that's the one area that he can still get a little bit better at.
Yeah, no, you're right. He was basically daring Taylor to serve and volley, and he saw he wasn't going to do it, so he could stay in his almost Medvedev-like return of serve positioning, and as you say, get away with it. Yeah, it's not a great matchup for Fritz. I just feel like, the rallying patterns are just so comfortable for Sinner, but I would say in terms of the attacking, that Fritz should be more willing to just make Sinner come up with the shots rather than shying away from coming in. I'd much rather see him get beaten that way, and I would think his coaches would feel the same way. But look, this was a big step for him. It was. You alluded to the Musetti at Wimbledon. That was on court one. It was a very disappointing performance. I've never seen his forehand let him down as badly as it did that day. And I think coming into that match, he really liked his chances to get through Musetti and play Djokovic in the semis and finally be in a semi. So, and the previous quarter against Djokovic was a good one in Australia, where he won the first set. He played, where he split the first two sets, I should say, and finally Novak got the better, and finally Novak started to break him. And it took a long time. Fritz had erased 15 break points against him there. He played a good match, better than he had at the U.S. Open against Novak last year. So I feel like he's definitely making some progress despite what happened against Musetti. But there's still room to grow, and I think he understands that. But he's got a lot of time left. I mean, we think, I feel like there's 5 really good years left in him, maybe more. So there's time. And he he, I think, is a good student of the game, and I think he's a deep thinker. You hear it in the way he talks about these matches. It surprises me. He's more analytical than a lot of the other players. More analytical, I think, than Tiafoe and many of his other fellow Americans. And so I think that's going to serve him well, and he's more driven. We think of him as sort of a laid-back Californian, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear that, and you can feel it on the court, and you can hear it in the interview of him, that he wants more from himself. And you could tell that he wasn't patting himself on the back for being in the final. It still disappointed him that he lost the match. So there are many good signs with him, but I still fear that he won't get past that final round. That may be the ceiling for him, is one or two more finals, as opposed to winning one or two majors. That's, I guess, if I had to predict, that would be what I would say.
Yeah, I guess the good part is with a guy like that, because he has that kind of determination and mentality, I would never imagine he'd go down as an underachiever or someone who could have won more. So I think he's either gonna surprise us or he's gonna, maximize. So I think that's kind of my outlook on him. But for France,
well, it was nice, Vanch. It was great that if he was going to get to that first final, that at a major, that it'd be in New York, and with the crowd effusively supporting him. And he started in the third set too. And I wouldn't think it would be a bad idea, by the way, to see more of this. But that fist pumping and was a little bit out of character, I thought, in a good way. I thought he was emoting more, and genuinely so, and letting the crowd share it with him. And that might be something that could help him perform better too. He tends to be very low key. Obviously, we think of Tiafoe as the emotive one, but I'd like to see more of that kind of emotional energy from Fritz that we started to see in that third set. It nearly allowed him to seal that set. So a lot of good signs. I was happy for him that he could have this kind of an achievement.
Yeah. For Francis, you mentioned his connection with crowds and how that's, kind of a big part of his game and his success. I want to see that energy that he brings to the US Open every year. I want to see that more often in other majors. I think he can do it at the Australian Open, where he got to the quarters in 2019. And I feel like if he kind of brings that same attitude, intensity, focus, I think we could see these kind of runs more often than just, only from Wimbledon to the Open or only in a few tournaments a year. I think, I feel more optimistic about him than I did this time last year when he lost to Shelton in the quarters. I think we're going to see some more consistency from him.
I agree with you. Listen, the problem with the loss to Shelton in the quarters was it's funny, this time he found the right balance. He found a way to selectively get the crowd behind him when he played Shelton, which, by the way, to me was one of the highlights of the fortnight.
Yeah.
As just a pure spectator match, it was even better, although the Fritz Tiafoe was quite good too. The Shelton Tiafoe was even better in terms of just sheer spectator appeal. And he waited for the right moments to sort of get the crowd going and to encourage them to get behind him, which he was not able to do a year ago. And he kind of faded in that fourth set a year ago against Shelton after having a set point in the third that would have given him 2-1. So I liked the way he orchestrated that, the way he conducted himself there. And I agree with your point that I could see him doing that. And his comments led me to believe that that's what he wants for himself. He said he didn't want to finish the year half-assed. And that was a brutally candid comment, but true. He needs to do that. He needs to prove it to himself, push his ranking up a little higher again, which could, by the end of the year, which would only help him with his seeding in Australia. Next year, I think, is going to be very telling, Vanch, because he seemed to be admitting too that he doesn't want to be known as this guy that just comes in every Open and wakes up for the Open, that this is his time. You can't depend on that. And the fact is, what if Djokovic had not lost at Poprin? What was going to happen then if he played Novak in the round of 16? I wouldn't have liked his chances, even with Novak struggling with that serve, which he did in every round. I still think it would have been very tough. So you just can't count on that. He needs to be making his mark elsewhere. He's had some nice performances at Wimbledon. Obviously, he had a great chance to beat Alcaraz this year before losing in 5. I think he can play decently on the grass too, but I agree. Australia, outside of the US Open, Australia is his best opportunity, and he should be really thinking about using the end of the year to win as many matches as he can to set the stage for a big Australia. that his attitude should be, I'm going to treat Australia just like the U.S. Open, and I'm gonna do something special there, and I'm going to start making a habit of it. We'll see. He's a fascinating guy in that stage. It's hard to figure him sometimes, and I don't think he always understands himself that well, because he does expect a lot of himself. But all I'm saying is I think the next 12 to 18 months is going to be one of the most crucial phases of his career, because that's where he's got to show that he can do it more consistently and play well in other majors. As you say, he's played well in the 2019 Australia. Look, he can do it, but this is the time to prove it.
Yeah, absolutely. Since we're on the subject of Americans, I think it's a good time to talk about Jessica Pegula and her run to the final here, because, she, just like Fritz, also had the quarterfinal syndrome that everybody had been talking about. And for her to beat the number one player the way she did, okay, Iga didn't play her best match. She made 41 unforced errors, and, it wasn't her best stuff. But I thought the way she played that match, the strategy she had coming in, the way she executed, and then also just the Mahova backup as well in the semis when she was down 1-6, love to, break point, and she comes up with that fantastic squash shot. And I thought she played an excellent final as well. So overall, I leave feeling pretty good about Jessie, who's 30 years old now, and she's playing some of her best tennis.
She was terrific. I agree with you. Part of the story was obviously Iga really struggling. 41, of course, is a huge total for her in a straight set match.
Yeah,
you don't expect to see her make that many in a 3-set match necessarily, certainly not in 2. But Pegula also rose to the occasion. She played great. She saw that Iga was really struggling off the forehand side, and she targeted it, and her own forehand was excellent. And then, as you mentioned, obviously coming out of that, a set, love to break point down against Mahova. And I thought I love the way she played the third set of that match. Second set was hard fought, and she was 4-2 eventually, and then 4-all and won it 6-4. But then the third, she had the break, and she was 3-1, 40 love, and it got break point down from there. 4-2, same thing happened. You didn't think it would happen again, but it was more her opponent's inspirational play than her own deficiencies. And once again, from 40 love up, she was break point down, and she got out of that and then ran out the match. So I felt like, and then I thought, by the way, that she really played quite a good final. I thought that was an extremely entertaining final, the 5-5 win for Sabalenka over Pegula, because both sets were so competitive. You had Jess down 5-2 in the first, got it back to 5-all, and 2 really long games to finish it off for Sabalenka. And then we go to the second set, and Jess is down love 3, break point. You thought maybe it's over, and she wins 5 straight games from there. And there I thought maybe she was going to take it into a third. And Sabalenka, much the way she'd done in the semis against Navarro, when she really had to sort of show some steely resolve and prove that she could pull it together when she most needed it and avoid a third set. And that was true in both matches. She did just that. And I thought that the 4-game run she had at the end was terrific. And there wasn't too much that Jess could have done about it. But the fact was, to lose 5-5 and play that was a breakthrough for her too, to be in the final like Taylor. And frankly, I like her chances better than Taylor's. If you want to talk about down the road getting a major somewhere along the line, I do like her chances. I know she's 30. I get all that, but I expect her to be in peak form for 2, 3, 4 more years, at least 2 or 3 more. And in that period, I think she just might get one. She already went 2 rounds further than she ever had. She was stuck in that quarterfinal syndrome. She got out of that. And the 2 matches you mentioned were really first rate. And the final itself, as far as a performance and defeat, hard to really argue that she played some exceptional tennis, despite not being rewarded with a set for her efforts, particularly the second set. So I really liked her effort, and I'm encouraged for her that this has opened up some windows in her mind toward what might happen in the next couple of years. She's a great competitor. What a summer she had to win Canada, final of Cincinnati, losing to Sabalenka, final of the Open, losing to Sabalenka again. And this is a much more disciplined, emotionally controlled Sabalenka than we've seen in the past, because even a year ago when she lost to Coco, it kind of unraveled for her after the first set. And I felt like, the Mahova match in Paris, I think of a lot of occasions where I think she imploded. And that doesn't seem to be happening. She can have bad patches now, as she did against Navarro. I mean, in the Navarro match, she was 4-2 and a couple of break points, 15-40 to go up 5-2 and just make it easy on herself. And that game got away from her, and she got tight, and then eventually had to hold on from 5-6 deuce with an ace, and then a good tiebreaker, great tiebreaker from losing the first 2 points to winning the last 7. So I loved what she showed us there, and then again in the final and winning the last 4 games from Pegula. That Sabalenka is now a much sturdier competitor than she's been before. No doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah, I'm very impressed by her mental effort, especially in the last 2 matches. But also what strikes me is that she plays with more clear-headedness and variety in some big moments as well. Like she's mixing in the slice, she's coming in, she's volleying. Like she has more options in her game now when plan A doesn't work. And I feel like she's able to, think through that a lot clearer, and she has more margin on her shots as well. So when she's in full flow, she kind of reminds me a little bit of Serena, like when she's serving huge and hitting so big off the ground, and she can just keep the racket out of anyone's hand. There's just no, there's the strike zone is so big with her.
Yeah, I think she's more comfortable, though, with funny enough, I would say I agree with that almost across the board, except I feel she is more comfortable. You mentioned about her coming in. That part of the game, the transition, getting up to the net, yeah, Serena would come in and make the swing volleys for sure, but I think Sabalenka is a bit, I like her approach to it a bit more, and I feel like it's more natural, and she doesn't have to rely always on swing volleys. Sometimes, she can just hit the conventional one, and she's improved a lot. And to the point where I now think she may close in on Iga, and they may have a fairly close race, because Iga is having continued difficulties, Vanch, in these other majors outside of Roland Garros, which concerns me. I want to get your thoughts on it, but I don't like the fact that, it's not like she makes the final. I mean, like, for instance, in the old days, Chrissy played in 10 Wimbledon finals. She was great on every surface. Grass, you would say, was maybe her worst surface. Clay and hard were by far her best. So she gets to 10 Wimbledons, loses 7 finals. But my point being, she's losing 5 of those finals to Martina Navratilova. She's always right in there, close, 3-set finals. Iga is losing to lots of different players in these other majors. And it's not like she's just getting to the finals and losing to Sabalenka, that's not what it's coming down to. And I think it's getting in her head, and she's not happy about it. And the Pegula match is yet another example of where she showed a lot of anxiety, and there was this byplay, this angst between her and her coach during that match. And it seemed like she just wasn't happy. Maybe she wasn't happy with what she'd been told before the match, or Jess was throwing some unexpected things her way. But I worry about that. While with Sabalenka, I feel she's at a stage now where she's great on all the surfaces. Iga is better on clay, but only, not by a wide margin. She can beat her on given days on clay. And then you look at Sabalenka on harder grass, and now we've seen a couple of Australian. We see the U.S. Open in her collection, and I feel like she's on her way to winning a lot of these now in the next 3 or 4 years. I could see her picking up, Vanch, a couple of majors a year. You think she's good for that? I would say, looking at 25 through 28, I'd be surprised if we didn't see in those 4 years 6, 7, in the range of 6 to 8 majors. But certainly, I'd be very surprised if she didn't get, say, 6 out of the 4 years.
Yeah, I think that's very realistic, especially the run that she's on of making 7 of the last 8 semifinals, and
right. Right.
She's almost like a lock to the semis these days in majors, which you wouldn't have said 2 years ago. Whereas Iga, outside of Roland Garros, the last couple of years has only made 2 quarterfinals.
Right.
So that's got to be worrying for her, because she's so great on the tour, and she has 10 1000s, and she's winning a lot of hardcourt masters, but she's not able to translate that somehow in these third round of quarterfinal matches in majors. And I just feel like she panics quite a bit, and she doesn't rely on her other strengths, like her athleticism, her consistency. Like, she usually plays with such great margin, but then, the forehand breaks down so easily. The second serve gets attacked. You don't really see her trying many different things out there to win points. She looks rattled, and that's got to be a very uneasy feeling for her. And because everyone's talking about it, and they yeah, and I was expecting a bit more because I felt like in the third round and the fourth round, she started to pick up her level and she
She
started
did.
feeling a lot more comfortable. And I even thought in the second set, the game that she broke Pegula back, I thought, okay, like game on, she's coming back here, she's playing some good tennis, and then she just gets broken at 3-all and makes a couple of uncharacteristic errors again, and it was just
No, it's true. It's got to worry. And you're right. She's shown that she can win those 1,000. It's not that she can't play on hard, but I mean, the record that she's compiled, and I'm glad she has one U.S. Open in her collection now, but otherwise a lot of disappointments, and worse in Australia. And I don't want to see her go down as somebody that ends up winning, say, 7 French Opens and 1 U.S. Open, and that's it. I remember Andy Roddick saying, there was a clip on Tennis Channel, and I don't know if it was from his podcast or for them, but he was saying the gist of what he said was, she's on her way to becoming one of the great women players of all time.
Yeah.
Well, to do that, she really needs those titles she needs those majors. She needs Australians, more U.S. Opens and Wimbledon in there to do that. She's got it. You don't want to see her. Let's face it. Rafa is one of her idols, I think. And Rafa, 14 of his 22 majors at Roland Garros. I get it, but he ends up with 4 U.S. Opens, 2 Wimbledons, 2 Australians. If that's that's probably going to be the final figures for him. And that just proved how great he was. That he wasn't satisfied to just make it all about Roland Garros, and he won at least 2 of all the other 3 majors, and that says the world about him. And I think she wants that for herself.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think it's almost better to be in Sabalenka's position, which is be number 2, but win 2 majors a year, than be number 1 and kind of peak everywhere else. And she's also kind of burning herself out because she's going so deep, and other events. She's played so many matches this year, but it's not happening for her on the biggest stages.
Such a good point. You'd rather be Sabalenka. Deep down, she would too. She knows that ultimately it's going to be more about majors. Yes, you want a lot of time and a lot of year-end number 1s for sure.
Yeah,
but not at the cost of.
She might get it this year. Because she's still ahead in the race by about 400. She might play well at the end of the year and still get it, but it's still got to feel like not as fulfilling if.
Yeah, I agree. I'm agreeing with that. I'm saying she doesn't want to do it with simply Roland Garros,
yeah,
and some other titles, but not good performances at the majors. So I hope that'll change in the future. But I think things are setting up. I do think she and Sabalenka are going to have some more great matches, and particularly on the clay. But I think they could have some very good ones at the other 2 majors as well. And in Cincinnati, when they played, it was not a great match, but a lot of that was the speed of the court. That court was so suited to Sabalenka. It was so quick that Iga couldn't stay with her there. But it's a shame. I feel like she looks at times, Vance, to be pretty miserable out there. And I don't like seeing that in a great champion. It looks like the word beleaguered comes to mind. Somebody who's just feels the weight of the world on her shoulders. And the only time I don't get that is Roland Garros, obviously. In the clay court season, there's a certain joy in what she's doing most of the time. But elsewhere, particularly at those other 3 majors, she feels a tremendous amount of pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see that rivalry develop. And I agree with you about Sabalenka. I feel like we have a real race in terms of majors, but also, just the clear-cut 2 best players in the game. So I like where it's going with those 2. But I also want to get your thoughts on Emma Navarro, because that's a really nice follow-up as well. Like, this year, 3rd round, 4th round, quarters, semis. I feel like she's really building towards, being a regular contender at almost every tournament she plays now. And, I was impressed by her again beating Coco.
Yes.
Even though Coco, had a lot of issues on her second serve and double faulted like 19 times, but still like Emma's floor is so high right now.
Yeah, what impressed me, it's funny, you made me flash to that match as well. What I liked was she had won the first set, Emma, and was up 4-3, 30 love in the second. It didn't hold her serve there, and Coco comes back to win the set. And a lot of other players in that situation and setting would have faltered in the third, because they would have been still replaying in their minds what had just happened late in the second. She didn't do that at all. She really regrouped in the third and got back on top and finished off Coco, and I thought played quite well against Sabalenka, especially in that second set comeback. So yeah, I'm very encouraged about her. She's a real pro. She exploits all of her strengths very well, and her mechanics are so sound off the ground. I don't see any weakness there in the technique. She's got a great return. She's not a powerhouse, but she hits the ball with good depth and pace. And serve is good for some woman that's not that tall. She serves well enough. No, I think she's the kind of player and a good versatility off the backhand, by the way, between the two-hander and the slice, and she mixes things up well off that side. So I feel like this year was no accident. She'll get better next year, and I love watching her play. I love watching her play in both the Coco match and the Sabalenka match, and to see how she's got a lot of poise on top of everything else. Tremendous poise on the court. She can deal with these crowds, and she's going to become a crowd favorite. No, we're going to see a lot of her in the next couple of years, and how far it leads in terms of maybe winning majors, I don't know, but I certainly expect that she'd be in the latter stages a lot, and solid top 10 player, and maybe makes a move toward the top 5, maybe, but top 10 for sure, for almost as long as she wants.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I do enjoy watching her play, the way she, her poise and also just her variety. But another player like that is Muchova, who is, I was very impressed by her getting to the semis of the U.S. Open in her 6th event back after like 10 months of, being sidelined with a wrist surgery. So to see somebody like that, that's another player that I really sort of root for, in terms of, because she's so fun to watch, and I feel like she can play on all the surfaces. And you saw Pegula say after the match that she felt like a beginner at times, and then in the first set and a half of that match. So I would love to see her make a run at Wimbledon or something, and win a major somewhere.
I think it could happen. She's extremely gifted. Those 2 games I mentioned against Pegula, with the 40-love leads that turned into having to hold from break point down, so much of that had to do with Muchova and her shot making, and she's spectacular at times. And there's not, she leaves you almost defenseless. And so that's why when you start talking about potentially a major and doing this well, and so soon into the comeback after the surgery, it is encouraging. And obviously she was close to breaking that match open it was a great effort from Pegula to turn it around in the second set. But had she won, I think she would have played quite a good match against Sabalenka in the final. She's an immense talent, and I hope she can stay injury free here and have a good spree ahead, because we know what a great French final she had. That French final that she had with Iga was terrific. That was a match she almost won that match. She was almost good enough to beat Iga on clay. And here she was just not far away from the U.S. Open final on hard. She can play on anything. Yeah. And I'd like to see her around, because she adds so much sparkle to it all. She's so different she's a little more inventive and creative than a lot of the other top players. And things can go wrong. I thought that Pegula made her play a lot of forehands on the stretch, which gave Muchova some problems. It's not that she doesn't have any weaknesses, but boy, the array of strengths that she has is just so much greater than any weakness. And she's got just tremendous all-around ability. Yeah.
Sometimes I used to think that she's too reliant on the slice, but I was watching some of her matches this week, and I was impressed with her two-hander as well. So I feel like, she can, she can be a little inconsistent here and there, but I feel like, when she finds her groove, some of those volleys that she pulls off, some of the forehand down the lines, the all-court game, it's just, it's a treat to watch. So,
and the passing shot, she hit a couple of shots against Pegula where Pegula just looked at her and grinned, as if to say, how in the world did you make that shot? And I think it was very, very wise of Pegula to not get mad at herself, or not to feel like Muchova was lucky, and just laud her for it. Just accept that she can make some just startling shots, when you least expect it. So I feel like as a shot maker, there's very few that can match her in women's tennis, and she's so good for the game because of it. And there was a perfect blend between Pegula's smooth movement and sound mechanics, and she's just always fun to watch because she does everything so well, and she comports herself so well, and she's such a great match player. That, and then the kind of unexpected bursts of brilliance. I shouldn't even say unexpected. The bursts of brilliance from Mahova. That maybe was the most enjoyable women's match of the tournament for me.
Yeah, I loved watching it. I mean, I also loved watching her play Osaka in the second round, and that was a nice contrast as well.
Yeah.
Osaka, who we talked a lot about at Roland Garros when she almost beat Iga and had match point.
Yeah.
So for her, I mean, it hasn't gone that well since, but I thought this was yet another match where she was close. She played great tennis, but she just didn't walk away with a set in the end. So that was a bit unfortunate.
Yeah, I had that triple set point, had that chance at 40-love on her serve to at least get this into a third. And it's been hard for Osaka because there's been so many matches like that.
Yeah.
Against Andreescu on the grass. Obviously, the one with Iga in Paris. So many matches that they were just so elusive, where she played some great tennis but was not good enough to win. Matches that when she was winning her 4 majors, that in that period, that she would have won, just almost on automatic, that she would have expected it, and that she was just more confident on the big points. And now I think it's weighing on her, even though we see her with this great attitude, Vanch, turns around and reminds me a bit of the old days with Maria Sharapova, where she'd turn around and look at the fence and compose herself in the next point. And in a way, that's what Naomi's doing now. And she did play a great match over on Armstrong against Ostapenko. That was like almost vintage Osaka, but unfortunately, that was it. It was fleeting again. So I hope maybe in the fall that she can get going and maybe somehow salvage a title somewhere, because winning it, as much as winning can become a habit, losing can too. And it's a strange game that way. She's now in the losing syndrome this year, and yet has played so much better than her match record would indicate from the beginning of the year on. So I do think she'll do much better next year. And I do think if she'd been a little luckier against Swiatek in Paris, this year might have turned out differently, because that proved to be a really, I think, an agonizing and debilitating defeat, because it's the kind of thing that lingers in your mind when you're playing as brilliantly as she did in the second and third sets, that you don't end up coming up with a win when you're 5-2 in the third and your match point at 5-3, and you're just so close to a spectacular win and you don't get it. And I think there was a carryover effect the rest of this year. So I hope it can happen for her, Vanch, because her attitude, it's not like when she had so much, when she looked so miserable and unhappy on the court at times and was clearly not enjoying herself before she had the baby. I think she's come back and been really has enjoyed it immensely and has been a good sport about the losses. But I think she's going to need to make a move. I hope, and next year is going to be an important year, and I hope that she can get on something of a roll, later this year into the early stages of next year and start pushing that ranking up where it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed talking about the US Open with you, men's side, women's side, and I look forward to the end of the year finish as well. Looking forward to our podcasts at the end of the year after the year-end championships. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Vanch. Always enjoy coming on. We'll be in touch and look forward to our next visit.
Cheers.